Okay, I'd like to reconvene the regular council meeting for Tuesday, February 11th. First up, we have a delegation, Amy Harbour from the Summerland Society for Civic Engagement.
Hello. My name is Amy Harbour with the Summerland Society for Civic Engagement. And I'd like to thank you thank those of you who came last night to our first town hall meeting, and also for this opportunity to present to you tonight. So the purpose of the Summerland Society for Civic Engagement is to encourage and facilitate discussion based on primary source documents in an effort to better inform decision-making in our community. Our society has been very busy examining the budget documents, and we've been sharing information and encouraging conversation. We have held our town hall meeting for the community, and now we're here with a delegation before council. Our society has listened to the citizens of Summerland who are concerned about both the proposed 7% tax increase for 2025 and also the upward trend of taxation over the last 5 years. As Carson Binda pointed out last night, this is nearly 4 times the rate of inflation. So tonight we are asking council to not pass the 3 readings of the financial plan and rather send the budget back to staff to recalculate a much lower increase. So we've identified at least 4 reasons to defer the approval vote and send the budget back to staff. First, the unexpected costs of the sewer clarifier, which adds nearly $2.7 million in unexpected costs. And we think that's a very good reason to send it back. Second, the AAP process that's occurring right now. We won't know the results until February 25th, potentially throwing 2 more projects into uncertainty. Thirdly, as the following slides will show, there are structural increases that indicate that the upward trend in taxation will only continue. And so we would like a more critical eye taken to the budget. As a community, and number 4, as a community, we just need more time, and we have it. So we know that we have until May 15th. So let's use it. So this graph shows the upward trend over the last 5 years, and it adds up to 20% actually over the last 5 years. And this doesn't include the property value increases that we've a lot of us have seen in our homes. So this isn't actually, doesn't capture what some residents have been facing. This graph shows the out-of-pocket costs for taxpayers over the last 5 years, and that amounts to over $400 in the last 5 years. And this year alone, when you look at the utility fee increase, the $130 proposed property tax increase, and then if the AAP project goes through, then that's another $65. So that's almost $400. Yeah, almost $400 alone this year. And this graph shows the rising costs of wages and salaries over the last 5 years. And we know that these labor costs are in part a result of increased programs and projects that have been approved by council over the years. And so we're asking that the municipality look for ways to reduce this trend. This graph shows the budget operational expenditures over the last 5 years. And I didn't actually have the slide ready yet, but we also have the actuals. And the actual for 2021 was 14 million. And so up to 2025, that's proposed 22.7 million, which is an $8 million increase in 5 years. So as a small community, I think we should be taking a critical look at why this trend is not sustainable. And so in summary, our municipality, as per our community charter, has until May 15th to approve the budget. And so we think we should use that time to take a critical eye to our spending and work together to reassess our priorities and find cost savings. So here's just some of the areas that jumped out to us as we were looking through the budget. Parks maintenance actually altogether adds up to 2.1 million, with 100,000 to maintain Powell Beach alone. It was 213,000 to maintain Dale Meadows. And those numbers are just not comparable to the private market. So I think that maybe contracting out could be considered there. And transit, we're wondering how many riders per day are using the bus, because it's costing us $785 a day to contribute to transit. So what efficiencies could be found there? The last one there, the compost project, it went from 86,000 in 2022 to 261,000 budgeted. So are we getting value for that when our garbage pickup has been reduced by half? And I think those are some of the questions that people are starting to ask. So a theme that emerged from guests last night was that residents would like to prioritize our focus to infrastructure and to projects and programs that add value to our town or incentivize business. I heard one guest comment that he's scared of the rising debt and taxes and where that will lead. Another said he's concerned about our failing infrastructure and how we will pay for it. And another guest urged to cut back to needs, not wants. One comment that really stood out to me, though, was when one of the councillors reminded the audience that you're just people too. And I think we have to remember that. It's hard to make decisions, and that the decisions are made with the information that we have at hand. So, and sometimes that changes, and we recognize that's a very difficult job. So we're hoping as a society that over the next months, we could gather a lot more information to make this decision, and our society would like to help with that. I think our community is ready to give some ideas for savings if we ask for it. So many residents came out last night to talk about solutions and ask for more time. How can we sharpen our pencils, get together, come up with some ways to save money, ensure that we're receiving value for every one of our hard-earned tax dollars? So again, in conclusion, we're asking to defer this approval until more examination of cost savings can take place. And thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open the floor to questions from council, if any. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for your presentation, Amy. It's great. I do have a question. So this is my 6th year on council, and I believe that this is probably the first time in 6 years that somebody has come forward and indicated that we are willing to take service cuts to lower the tax rate. So I guess my question is, if we were to pursue this avenue, how deep do you want the service cuts, or how deep do the citizens want the service cuts? Because it could get quite extreme, and so that's where I kind of wonder about how deep do you, because I know there was some talk, well, we want zero. Well, zero is impossible. We cannot do zero. There's just, it's out of the realm of what we can do. But I know that as far as service cuts go, you know what? I am more than willing to look at service cuts. And I just want to put it out there that if the service cuts happen, it's something that would impact all our citizens in Summerland.
I think, thank you for the opportunity to comment to that. It seemed to me that last night, like we sort of just scratched the surface about people starting to think about where we could cut services. But I think it seemed to me that there's a lot of people starting to realize that the level of taxation is going up too high. It's reaching that point where people are saying we can't afford that. So we're recognizing that we might have to prioritize infrastructure and trim down some of the projects and programs that a municipality takes on.
Thank you. Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Amy, for your presentation. And I attended the meeting last night, and it was really interesting to hear other points of view. So thank you for hosting it. It's really difficult when we're sitting here because everybody has a different idea of needs and wants. What you want and what you need is not necessarily what a senior wants or what a mother wants for her kids or something like that. Like there's so many different people that come to us requesting things. And so we're constantly trying to juggle that and help everybody out. And it's a really difficult spot to be in.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, you mentioned a lower increase than 7.25, which is average for the Valley. What is an acceptable number? I'm just wondering if you have an acceptable number in mind for a tax increase.
I don't have that sort of figured out yet. Like I haven't set a mark in my own mind. I think what we're asking for is an attempt to go back and look where savings could be found. Like for instance, as we talked about last night, Vancouver's council set a cap actually at 5.5, but because they had the idea to put a task force together, then that task force went in and found 26 million in additional savings, which brought that down to even further 3.9. So I think at this point, what our society is asking for is just to go and look, like just take a look at where we can find those savings. Because my understanding is that the budget by default is set to keeping service levels as they are. The default is status quo, and that it takes the direction of council to go back and look to bring the tax percentage down. So that's sort of the point we're at right now, is let's just wait and go back and start the process.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this kind of project because, like Councillor Patton said, this is the beginning of residents talking about a change, and change doesn't happen overnight. And so when I hear discussion about efficiencies, but I also can recognize the work that staff talked about in the week-long budget process that they'd already been in for 6 months. That then they came to us with detailed budget documents that we went over line for line. And, taking a look at efficiencies, I feel like, sure, there might be a few, but I think to look at a bigger shift in focus and ideology is not efficiencies. It's talking about service level cuts. And service level cuts don't come in a short-term fashion. It's a major decision if council would choose to shift the direction of our municipality and the services we provide to our residents. So I see these efficiencies, but I don't see that what you're suggesting is looking for efficiencies. I feel like you're requesting larger savings, and that from my perspective would take more time and more input from staff.
Thank you for your comment. I think our society is looking at a more broad look at what government in general is trying to do in a municipality. So that might involve some bigger cuts. I agree. Yeah, we are looking for that.
Councillor Barkle.
Thank you, Worship. I guess I wanted to say something to let you know that, hey, your comments are heard. right? You know, the budget
Thanks.
can always stand more review. But you also have to go back to our agenda for December 10th, where the budget was first presented in real detail, down to $5,000 differences on accounts from one year to year and such. And it's an exhausting process to go through it in the detail that we have this year. And I think we went through it and there was particularly more attention to what could be cut and this year than some years, other than COVID. During the COVID years, there was, travel budgets cut in half and a remarkable amount of budget cutting during COVID. So maybe there's a little bit of creep, but our activities have increased since then. I think the time to speak to where there could be potential cuts is when when council itself is discussing it, because we've had these discussions, the contracting out thing. It's an issue that has come up many times over the years already. And of course, there is the issue of the union and how do you get their cooperation? So which sort of things could potentially be contracted out? It's come up. I'm not going to say specific. I don't want to speak out of turn, but let's just say it has been discussed, and we are a group of citizens, and votes are not always 8 to 7 to 0, 3, 4 votes and things like that, because there is the range of views that you have on council. So the additional eyes on the budget is great. We certainly want to hear from you. You need to, I think, have a little bit more interaction with our accounting staff, because there's certain things that you put in, like that graph on expenditures increasing from year to year. But a line item within that is contributions to to reserves. So that's, really not an operational thing. So if you want to look at it, sort of a little bit more detailed, the end result was not that much difference. It's growing. But, I guess maybe as an accountant, I get a little picky about these things. So you got to look at the right things. And then there was something about the amount of labor costs that have increased. And you can't compare, say, 2025 budget to 2024 actual, because 2024 actual has all the money that fell off the table because people were absent or, they quit or things like that. So if you want to be involved, a little bit more dialogue and coming to the council meetings would be great. Running for council would be great. And then, you could really get into it. But there's the big education process for budgeting. So anyhow, you have some of the same ideas as council already has, but keep them coming.
Thank you.
Councillor Peak.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Mayor. Amy, I want to thank you for tonight, for coming. I attended the meeting last night. I thought it was very well run. A little crowded. We had a lot of people there, but that's a good thing too. But it's wonderful to hear from more of our residents. Some of those people were not available for our open house. So coming to the one that you sponsored gave them another opportunity. When I look at the examples that you have here, the staff earnings over 75,000, when you're in a union climate, that bargaining thing is set up. We have looked at contracting out over time. I remember some years ago, because it was my first term on council, we tried to work with SD 67 so that we would take on the maintenance in this area for SD 67 and ourselves, or we could have given it the other way around. Couldn't come to any agreement. We were always looking for ways of minimizing the cost of what we're doing. We have a great summer school, summer student program, and a lot of those young people get a chance to come on and see what municipal work is like. Sometimes we actually get people that go away and train to be an engineering tech or surveyor, whatever. And those opportunities are wonderful too. And then we've also gotten jobs for our young people in the area. So there's stuff that we do that makes good sense. What Councillor Barkwell spoke about in terms of some of our costs is that we're putting money away in our reserves so that we won't have to borrow as much in the future. Some costs they come to you, like the escalation in costs happen because things are more expensive. And whether that's construction on the work that you're needing to do on your waterworks or your sewer, or we've been trying for money for a clarifier for umpteen years. Well, when your sewage plant is getting older, things happen. I look at the compost cost. The compost is a wonderful program, and it's become so well used that we're actually getting a lot of material. So the things that we're looking at is enlarging a bay, getting water up there so you create better compost faster, so you have the space to do it. All for the fact that you don't want to have to get a decommissioned landfill because it's going to cost you millions and millions of dollars. So you're extending the life of your landfill. So this is an investment. This is not a cost in that sense of just spending money for no reason. You know, we've done a partnership on the rodeo grounds for an opportunity. But we've had people that have regularly rented there who the group that are doing, they're not too happy with how they're making their decisions. So there's always balances in what you're looking at. But we do look at opportunities for change. And we will continue to do that. Your group is a wonderful thing to start out. I remember one year we had a task force with accountants that looked at our budgets. But if your group came in at the budget process early next year and came to those budget discussions, you'd learn a lot more. This is 25 years for me on council. I learn something every day I'm here. Budget time is a time you learn an awful lot of stuff. So I would invite you to have some people that could attend those as well. But I'm really pleased that the discussion is going on in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barkle?
Yeah, I was sort of thinking the same thoughts as Councillor Peak, but I also realized that we're not necessarily set up to accommodate what maybe she was suggesting, and which I kind of like to see if they have a group that independently was to review the budget and then wanted to come to council about it. We don't necessarily want to rehash the same things over that we've just sort of rehashed. But on the other hand, if they came to committee of the whole and presented some things, that would be good. But our delegations are not at the committee of the whole. I don't think our procedure bylaw allows for delegations at the committee of the whole. So perhaps we would want to make that change so that people could make presentations during budget discussions, which are usually in the committee of the whole. Set it up as a formal invite rather than to give people the opportunity to have input, because nobody comes, but if they have a chance to say something, they might come.
Yeah, maybe we could give that some thought in terms, it doesn't have to be such a formal process either. It can be more informal. We're kind of getting into our budget discussion already, which is the next agenda item, which is fine. So you're correct, Amy. We do start with a status quo budget, with the same service levels and everything as previous years. And that's what we did this year. And that came out to an 18.41% increase. So that's when we said, ooh, we got to cut. And we cut, and first staff took some cuts. And when it came to council, it was they had it down to a 9.27%. When at council, we made some more cuts, and we got it down to 7.25%. So it went from 18.4 as a status quo down to 7.25. We did a lot of cuts this year. And as a number of councillors have said, if we want to cut further, we're going to have to cut service levels. we cut some service levels this year, but very small ones, like getting rid of the second unlimited yard waste collection, right? That is kind of minor in terms of what you're talking about. And as Councillor Patton said, it's okay, if we're going to cut services, how deep are we going to go? And not only how deep, but who is it going to affect? Because it's going to affect somebody. And the risk is that we'll cut services that affect the most vulnerable in our community. And because those are the ones who don't really have much of a voice. It's usually the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So all to say that I think this is a wider community discussion. It's not something that we can have in time for this budget, but we're I think as Councillor Barkwell said, we're talking about the budget process is a year-long thing. We make decisions through the whole course of the year, which have budget implications come budget time. And so I certainly encourage your group to keep in touch. Let's figure out a way of how that can work, where we can work together looking at things, and how we can engage with the wider community. But it's not really, I don't think we should be hitting the panic button right now for this budget. I think it should be looked in the longer view of things. So that's my view. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. So it's no surprise to our CAO or my colleagues that I have been talking some service cuts. And so I'm just going to tell you, but they're contractual obligations. So my cuts that I'm looking at cannot happen for the 2025 budget. But one of them is our dog control. Our dog control is just at a 1% tax increase is $108,000. Our dog control is almost $90,000 a year, right? So if we remove our dog catcher, then how is that going to impact some? So and that's an indication. The other indication, and as Mayor Holmes has talked about, is our vulnerable persons, is we offer free transit. So that free transit comes at a fairly hefty cost to our taxpayers. So do we look at now revising that again and saying, okay, you know what? It was great, but maybe we can't afford it. Maybe we have to look at reducing, and maybe it's going to be for persons over 65 or whatever the case may be. But, then, so there's some contractual stuff that I'm looking at, and I've already let Graham know that the budget discussion for 2026 has already started. And I don't want to, I want to be very cognizant when I bring stuff forward for these service level cuts that that I'm not being too aggressive. We need to make a change, and it was quite evident in what you've done. And I thank you for that. The status quo cannot be the status quo. It's now a moving target. And so I want to thank you. But for me, I think what I have to do is I have to look at moving into when we start our formal discussions in October. But I'll have my plan already in place with my colleagues and our CAO on some service level cuts that we can do to bring the 2026 levels down. So anyways, I just wanted to give you a heads up that it hasn't fallen on deaf ears.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for this opportunity to present. And thank you to everyone who came out last night. And we really look forward to speaking more and keeping in touch and being part of the process.
Okay, yeah, Councillor.
Just one more thought. Last night at the meeting, I really heard from people that infrastructure was really important and looking after, that's one of our primary jobs is, water, sewer. the AAPs we have right now are for infrastructure projects, like, Victoria Road South, that's for replacing water mains and repaving. And so one of the ways that we pay for that is partially borrowing and then partially asset management, and which we put aside every year to reduce the amount that we need to borrow. And so we can't have it both ways. Like if we want new infrastructure, we want to take care of what we have, then we have to figure out how to pay for it and when we pay for it and who pays for it. So that's something that we debate all the time. And there's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on the year, it depends on the grants, it depends on a bunch of different factors. And so I think when your group comes to us, which I think would be a great idea for next year's budget process, is having a stance on how you guys see that, like how you see us paying for things that need to get done and which way we want to do that and how we want to do that, because that kind of input would be helpful. This council thought that the AAP, like we think that this is a good process because these projects we think need to be done. Staff are telling us they need to be done, and you can see it in the roads, they need to be done. And so we think this was the right process for this time. But if you guys have other ideas, like bring them forward. So, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. Move on along the agenda, now on to the 2025-2029 financial plan, and I'll ask our Director of Finance to take this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So over the past 4 months, the district has been actively involved in budget discussions. October and November focused on the district's 3 utilities and included a virtual open house on November 19th, which to date has received 127 views on our YouTube channel. I think that's a record for any budget presentation we've ever done. Utility increases of 8.08% in sewer, 7% in water, and 5.66% in the electric utility were approved and became effective on January 1st of this year. These cumulative increases provide additional asset management contributions in the 3 utility funds that total 6%. They cover increased operating costs of 9.59%, and they also include a 5.15% sewer rate increase to cover new debt payments associated with the publicly approved borrowing for a new primary clarifier. December and January's focus shifted to the general fund, which was presented to the public at the district's January 15th budget open house, which was held at the Arena Banquet Room. Significant work went into getting that proposed tax rate that the mayor noted earlier, from the starting 18.41% down to today's 7.25%. Now, this increase includes 0.5% for increased asset management contributions, a 5.05% increase for increased operational costs, and 1.7% to cover the new debt payments associated with the Prairie Valley Road upgrades. So to date, we have received 3 written submissions from the public in relation to this budget, and they've included in your agenda packages. And additionally, 111 people have viewed that presentation on our YouTube channel. So we're getting out there. The overall impact of this financial plan to a residential home assessed at $878,808 is $350 annually, or $29.26 monthly. Now, breaking that down, property taxes make up $130 of that amount. Garbage is $14, water $71, sewer $35, and electric $100. So $350 on an annual basis. So with the public engagement component now complete, the financial plan is now ready to be considered for first 3 readings of council. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Council, anything? No? Okay, Councilor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. So being a district and we're very fortunate to have the amount of farmland that we have within our boundaries. Don't get me wrong, we need the farmland. So I'm just going to throw some numbers out there and you tell me. So if we have a 1/4 acre urban lot and say that quarter acre urban lot, the taxes are $4,000 a year. All right, just as a number. So if we took and made a 5-acre parcel out of those urban lots at $4,000, we'd be looking at about a revenue generation of taxes of about $80,000. Easy numbers, just, they're not accurate by any means. I'm just using it as a reference. If we were to take one 5-acre farm parcel in Summerland, the taxes on that 5-acre parcel, give or take, might be about $5,000. So I guess my point being is our Mayor Holmes has been diligently going over the provincial government on how we can increase our revenues based on the amount of monies that we're bringing in. Because right now, 85% of our taxes, of our revenues that are being brought in by 8% of our area of Summerland. So I don't think for us, and me being an urban taxpayer, I can't see, without us doing some service cuts and whatnot, I cannot see how we can keep maintaining what we're doing when we have such a small percentage of our community paying the gross amount of our property tax. So it's more probably a comment than a question, but I guess being as our CFO, do you feel that I am on the right track? Is the way I'm thinking this fairly common to how you have to deal with it from our budget perspective?
Through the mayor to Councillor Patton. Without delving into the math, the philosophy that you've described is something that the district is faced with. The majority of our taxation dollars, and it's closer to 87% now, is generated through Class 1 residential homes. And less than 0.5% is generated from Class 9 farmland. So there is quite a disparity that as a jurisdiction that we struggle with in terms of revenue generation, especially when some of these properties are, there might be an ALR and there's restrictions on what can be done out there and all those different types of things. So it's definitely something, and we provide services to all of these residences. So providing services to these residents, and sometimes the taxation dollars that are coming back on the other side might not be equal. So it's definitely something that we struggle with. I struggle with in terms of trying to put budgets together and looking at different service levels and those types of things. I know this council has lobbied the province at least 3 or 4 times since I was hired here. And I know that at the most recent UBCM convention, the mayor spearheaded a delegation of similar like communities like ourselves. So we are having those conversations, not only at staffing levels, but at political levels now. But yeah, it is something that as a community, it's challenging to try to generate the revenue that's required from a fairly small land base. So I don't know if I answered your question or if I just rambled on there, but those are my thoughts.
No, I thank you very much.
Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is it's new to any discussion we've had at this table in terms of the budget. But if tariffs are coming down for all the provinces, are there any of the compounds, the chemicals, the supplies that we normally get, the purchases over the next year that may be impacted by that? And I'm not expecting an answer. I'm just thinking, is it a consideration as we move through our budget?
through the mayor to Councillor Peak. Similar to a question we received at the open house in terms of the US and tariffs and those types of things. For a lot of our capital projects, we do build contingencies into our capital projects. We know that cost escalations occur on a daily basis. A lot of the budgets that are utilized aren't, they're not the high-end detailed design up to the light standard, right? So there's definitely contingencies that are taken into a place that will hopefully cover off any tariffs that do come down, if they ever come down. One doesn't really know what's going to happen in terms of that. On the operations side, we as staff, we have conversations. We do have minimal surplus funds that should things escalate rapidly that we could get into. But if things were to go over a long period of time and tariffs were there for months and months and months, we would need to look at our operations and look where things were going and have those hard conversations internally to determine whether or not we needed to change things or if we needed to cut certain things. But at any point in time, you guys would be the first ones to know.
Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Patton brings up a point that is not very well understood at all by a lot of people in the community. He brings up the inequity of the way the taxes are raised and the preservation of the farmland and how that falls on the urban residents of small towns like Summerland that have a large rural base. It's not about raising more tax money or anything like that. It's simply an equity issue. The people in Vancouver who are all the political power are want to preserve the farmland, yet they're not helping to pay for it because it costs $3 for us to service every the farmland for every dollar of revenue we get. And that's just simply an equity question. It's not about raising more money. It's like who should pay. And also related to that, I'd like to point out that despite this challenge in Summerland, we have the second lowest taxes for an average house in the valley. So I think that it goes to show that everybody's putting their heads down to try and keep costs within reason.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you for those remarks, Councillor Barkwell. I do echo those. I think kind of where I land in the challenge around our taxation is the fact that I feel like our staff and council are actually doing the work, trying to get the budget down to a respectable place. But the challenges of inflation and what's just generally been happening in our economy are beyond sort of smaller decision-making levers. But the discussion to change our service levels for our residents is a huge discussion and will impact us. And that's not something I'm willing to take lightly or to do in a short-term basis. And actually, and secondly to that, something I just want to remind everybody is that it is up to council to take, say, public feedback and to move forward, but to have a discussion about the governance of service level cuts isn't us necessarily dictating what individual service would be cut. We're here to help govern. And so staff often know best about how their operations work and how their departments work. So if we ask for a 10% cut from the budget, we're not going to go line by line. We do that, we give that work to staff to figure out how to run the corporation of the District of Summerland while reducing the budget by 10%. So that's not a line-by-line budget item that you do in December. That's a year-long process of changing the direction of your corporation. And that's a really big discussion. So just want to put into context the roles that we all play.
Thank you. Councillor Chin.
I think another important thing to consider is that, and the CAO and I kind of debriefed about this last night after I watched the presentation from the gentleman from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He talked about things to watch out for, and he talked about downloading from the province. And that is actually true. Like they are changing regulations all the time, whether it's like the landfill or the what we have to do at the sewage treatment plant. And they come out with these and they say, nope, the threshold's higher now, or the threshold's lower now. And so then we have to respond to that, but we don't have any funding to do that. We're expected to just do that ourselves. And so I think, we take some of those concerns to UBCM every year, but that's another frustrating part. And so I think that's where our MLA could perhaps help out as well. And just, what the province does affects us a lot, and we don't have a lot of control over it. So that's definitely a frustrating part of sitting at this table, is that we're just subjected to. And they have good reason a lot of time, but it's just, it comes with a cost, and it's like, who keeps paying for these things? So.
Councillor Peak.
I'd like to bring the resolution forward as stated.
Yeah, go ahead.
The financial plan for 2025 to 2029, bylaw number 2025-001 be read a first, second, and third time.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Betts. Any further discussion? Councillor Barkwell?
Yeah, I think there's a point that Councillor Betts wanted to make, I forgot, because she made it earlier. And that's, the people point to the tax increase 7% being considerably higher than the rate of inflation. Overall, I don't know what inflation has been over the last 4 years, but it looks like we average about 4% as tax increases. It's largely because the things that the district purchase have gone up phenomenally, and they gave some examples before about chemicals for the water treatment plant doubling and things like that. And you should know from your own life that some things have gone up and some things are gone down. Food, which was the example Councillor Betts gave, is she figures has gone up like maybe 20-30%. So it all depends on the nature and of what you're purchasing, where the overall cost increases land. So it's not really from going crazy on additional things. It's just the things that we buy have gone up.
Yeah, and I'll also add that we have, every year I've been on council, I think, so it's 10 years now. We intentionally benchmark ourselves with other municipalities in the Okanagan. We look at what their rate, and consistently, year after year after year after year, our tax increases are lower than other municipalities. And that's intentional. We do that intentionally. However, it eventually catches up to us. If you're consistently bringing in tax rate increases lower than inflation, and all municipalities face the exact same inflationary pressures. We all have to buy the same chemicals for our water treatment plant. We all have to buy the same, we all do the same thing, so we all have to buy the same stuff. And so if we're not keeping pace, then it eventually will catch up to you. And that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing this year. I think more than any other year we saw that. We have to look at we have to look at that at other things, and whether it's cutting service, we can look at shared services with other municipalities. That's something we've talked about and looked at areas that might be an option. And another big factor is, as Councillor Traynor mentioned, is the offloading from the province. That is real. So many things are offloaded to us. Every year there's something else that's offloaded to us. And too often that when something's pushed down to us, the funding to deliver that isn't either enough or not at all. And so that's why we need to keep lobbying at UBCM and FCM And that's, the biggest effort of both those organizations is really addressing that issue. It's becoming a bigger problem. And it's not just us, it's every municipality that's dealing with this. And the other thing is the province and the federal government, they are not funding large infrastructure projects the way they used to. That's just a simple fact. You do not get these multi-million-dollar grants to build rec centers or to do major water main upgrade projects. What we get is smaller grants up to $1 million max to do planning, to do these big projects. So we've got all these plans funded by the government, but we haven't got the money to actually do the projects itself. So again, it's so things have shifted. We're hopeful they'll shift again, where government does provide more support. So what we need, or maybe they won't. Maybe we're in a new reality. But that's what before we start, I think, doing deep cuts into the services that we provide, then we need to know which way those winds are blowing. Because yes, maybe if the government is not going to fund rec centers anymore, maybe we ought to get out of the rec center business because we can't afford it. Those are the sort of really hard community discussions we're going to have. But we need to know, but it's not just a local discussion. It's a provincial and national one as well. And we need answers from all levels of government to say, where are you going to spend your infrastructure funding? Because if it's not locally, then maybe we can only do so much. But if they're going to continue to invest the way they used to, then yeah, then we should carry on, right? So a lot of unanswered questions there. Councillor Marco.
So if we pass this bylaw here, Ms. Harbor's going to think, well, I spoke to council, but they didn't listen to me. But she'll go back to her group. But I think we hear what she's saying. We share her concerns. It's painful as a politician to put in tax increases, and but we'll just keep on working on it. It's an all-year kind of a deal. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Patton.
I just want to, segue on Councillor Barkwell. Your message, Amy, has been heard, and you can be rest assured that as we move into 2025 and as we get into the fall and we start talking budgets, myself and I'm sure my colleagues are going to have a list that we'll be able to implement to offset what's coming. And it's going to be a scary time, but we will come through it. But I want to thank you again for all the work you've done, and I look forward to going to some more of your meetings. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. Moving on, the reconsideration of Hunters Hill development approval. Mr. Dolvett, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have some slides, but I have a couple of introductory remarks just on background for this rezoning application for council's benefit. So Hunters Hill joint venture submitted a rezoning only application at our office seeking to place the RU3 zone on the remaining development lands in August 2024. With the request to place an urban residential zone outside the district's urban growth boundary, planning staff advised Hunters Hill that an OCP amendment would be required to expand the urban growth boundary. Hunters Hill then submitted a revised OCP amendment and rezoning application that included the proposed expansion of the urban growth boundary on November 25th, 2024. Following a process of internal and external referral comment gathering, staff provided Hunters Hill a TPC outcome letter dated January 8th, 2025 that requested additional information to advance the application, including an update to the Hunters Hill neighborhood plan, a traffic impact assessment, among other information requested. This TPC outcome letter is in council's package for your information. As per the Local Government Act, if a municipal council delegates the responsibility to determine the required development approval information for an application to a development officer, we must have a process within our procedural bylaw for reconsideration of those information items that's been requested. And that's the reason why this is being brought forward to council at this point in time. Sections 2.4 and 2.5 of our development application procedures bylaw sets out this reconsideration process for the district. Hunters Hill was notified of this process at a meeting with staff on January 23rd. And following this meeting, a letter of reconsideration was submitted to our offices on January 27th, 2025. And with that, Greg, if you put my slides on the screen. So the discussion section of staff's report is broken down into three specific items that Hunters Hill is requesting council reconsideration on. The remaining information items are assumed to be agreed upon by Hunters Hill, and so we're not discussing that for the purpose of this presentation. The first item that was proposed within their letter was the request to update the Hunters Hill neighborhood plan. This existing plan was last updated in 2016, and staff have noted that there are many inconsistencies with the plan today, as the plan has not been updated with the previous rezoning for the cluster country residential site-specific lots on the property. The Hunters Hill neighborhood plan also includes parcels of land not owned by Hunters Hill joint venture, such as 17013 Sanborn. And on January 31st, so this past Friday, another OCP amendments and rezoning application was submitted to the district's offices for that property, which also similarly requested that their property be added to the urban growth boundary and there be a redesignation of the OCP to allow for a higher density residential use. An update to the neighborhood plan can ensure that both these rezoning applications are planned together and traffic flows and land use and servicing are addressed together with this update. The neighborhood plan also from 2016 identified a community park around the ephemeral wetlands on the subject property. However, the approved environmentally sensitive development permit recommended restricting human access to this area in order to preserve this sensitive ecosystem. The Hunters Hill neighborhood plan as well identified a number of future access points to lands beyond. But in phase two, this access to lands beyond was removed and not provided other than servicing. And their new plan proposed currently doesn't show access to lands beyond to the north, although this is something that we've recently requested. Kind of the bigger concern, I think, from the planning side is what's provided in the current plan for Hunters Hill in terms of the density proposed. So in 2016 for Hunters Hill, there was planned to be 56 single-family residential lots. They would be for country residential zones only, with parcel sizes a minimum of 1 hectare in size, and to be serviced with on-site septic systems, not a sanitary sewer connection to the district's sanitary sewer facility. Following the development of the plan, though, Hunters Hill was developed with, or has developed with approval of a site-specific country residential zone that allows for a lot size of 1,300 square meters and access to the district's sanitary sewer system. Their current plan is shown here on this image, provides for 173 single-family lots that are zoned still for single-family residential, and are zoned country residential site-specific. The proposed plan that's been recently submitted by Hunters Hill is for 210 lots. 138 of those lots proposed to be zoned RU3, which is basically all the future areas to be redesignated and rezoned to RU3. The RU3 zone allows for, when included in the urban growth boundary, up to 4 residential lots per parcel. Because of the new provincial legislative requirements of Bill 44. So although it is, I know Hunter's Hill's intention to only build duplexes on those grayed out lots, as well as single family dwellings on those white area lots on this plan, once those lots are sold, there is limited control that we have with district staff to allow additional units, up to 4 residential units, to be constructed at a later point in time, other than evaluation of the zoning now. I do want to mention too, just going back to this slide, that staff recognizes that there's merit to considering this additional density. Given the need to provide more attainable housing units for the District of Summerland and to increase our local housing supply in the face of a provincial housing crisis. However, we feel at staff level, at least, that this density should be appropriately planned. And the way to do that is through an update to the neighborhood plan that is being requested. Question?
Councillor Peak?
Very kindly, do all these lots, and I don't remember the size that gives the opportunity for 4 units, do all these lots fit that requirement?
Through the chair to Councillor Peak, the proposed lots, yes, they meet the requirement for the RU3 zone based on the design that's been submitted, and would allow for 4 residential units if added to the urban growth boundary.
If I may just supplemental, even with the geography, because some of those are sort of on a slope or whatever. So
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Peak, obviously there'd be physical constraints to adding 4 units per parcel. There's always going to be other factors related to what's just provided in the zoning or what can be physically constructed on a lot. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just along those lines for clarification, so 210 planned lots with of that 138 would be zoned RU3 is proposed, with up to 4 potential allowed units per parcel. So that would be 552 units plus the remainder. Like, I mean, yeah, okay. And with the RU3 zoning, just a quick question, do I recall that it can go 3 stories?
Your worship to Councillor Bennett. No, RU3 is our suburban zones for the outlying areas of the community, not in the core area where we did go to 3 stories.
Okay.
So that it's still a 2-story maximum for this area.
Just for clarification, so Hunter's Hill is not in the urban growth area. So right now, they wouldn't be allowed to do 4 units then. As long as it's not in the urban growth area, it's just like duplexes, but not 4 units. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Trainer, their current zoning, yes, they wouldn't be allowed or wouldn't need to go to 4 units because it's not in the urban growth boundary, and therefore it doesn't have to comply with Bill 44. Right now, their current zoning also restricts duplexes, though.
Okay.
And I think that's their primary intent for the rezoning application, is to allow for duplex use.
Okay.
I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, but it seems like the right time to ask the question. If you want to prevent 4plexes, but you want to have duplexes, can't we just rezone it and not put it in the urban growth boundary? I mean, isn't that the issue, like being involved in the urban growth boundary?
Through your worship to Councillor Barkwell, I think there's different ways that rezoning requests could have come forward. The RU3 zone specifically was requested by the applicant. I think if we were going to apply that specific zone, it's an urban residential zone, so it should be added to the district's urban growth boundary because it's an urban residential zone.
And you can fill 4 units.
sorry, to follow up with Councilor Barkley, yes, and then you can have up to 4 residential units. So finally, the neighborhood plan also provided a rural standard local road cross section with stormwater dishes as shown in that top image. No on-street parking provided and no sidewalk connectivity. It is expected that the future phases, though, of Hunter's Hill will be subject to the district's new hillside road standard. So that's the image down below. This is a new standard that we've implemented into our subdivision development servicing bylaw. We are expecting to implement that, but there's a couple of differentiations between the two road standards. The one below does include a sidewalk on one side of the road, as well as on-street parking and stormwater captured via a pipe system versus a ditch conveyance system. So we also think there's merits to evaluating the neighborhood plan in relation to this new road standard. Additional staff context includes a review of our official community plan. The OCP states that future changes to the district's urban growth boundary should be based on the findings of the neighborhood plan. Currently, the neighborhood plan states that Hunter's Hill should not be added to the growth boundary and be maintained in its rural residential designation. Therefore, the plan should be updated to rationalize the expansion to the district's urban growth boundary. The findings of the neighborhood plan could also support the current update to the district's OCP, which is currently ongoing, and potentially evaluating this area for inclusion of a northern area to the district's urban growth boundary in the district's OCP. Another item of concern identified in the applicant's letter was the timeline to update the plan. Planning staff have identified that it's in our estimate that the plan can take just 1 month period to complete, as no specific public engagement, and primarily this being just a technical update to ensure consistency of the neighborhood plan with the proposed rezoning. And additionally, the public engagement component could be the OCP and rezoning process itself, because there will be a need for a public information meeting, as well as council review and a public hearing with that process. So in that regard, the additional timeline could still be included in the estimated timeframe discussed with Hunter's Hill of approximately 4 to 6 months in total for the NOCP amendment application. The second request from Hunter's Hill was to waive the requirement for an off-street pathway to be constructed from the intersection of Dickinson Road and Sanborn. This pathway is included in future phase 5 of the Hunter's Hill development. Staff note that the proposed rezoning is a more urban style development and will require sidewalk on one side of the street for future phases. As well as this additional density, if it's going to be approved, may attract more young families and kids within the neighborhood. And for that reason, there should be connectivity to parkland amenities within the neighborhood itself. This off-street pathway as well could be connected further down Sanborn Avenue. And we mentioned earlier here that the rezoning application has been recently received for 17013 Sanborn. So this off-street pathway could be connected further down Sanborn and potentially even connect at some point in the future down Watson or Bentley Road to the rest of the community. The third and final request was for a water main expansion of 50-meter length to connect 19008 Garnet Valley Road to a booster station. You can see on the image to the right. The upper reservoir for Hunter's Hill refills from the water main in Garnet Valley Road. And with more development in Hunter's Hill, more people are using water, and more often this reservoir is having to refill from the main in Garnet Valley Road. 19008 Garnet Valley Road has found and recently reported to district staff that it loses its water pressure every time that the reservoir refills from Hunter's Hill. So at the staff level, we feel that increasing the density for the Hunter's Hill development will make this problem worse, which means that at some point in the future, Summerland will be on the hook to fix the issue for 19008 Garnet Valley Road specifically. We think that the level of effort to fix it, though, is small, of only 50 meters of pipe extension to the service for 19008 Garnet Valley Road. And so we are requesting that Hunter's Hill complete that as part of their off-site requirements. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions from council. I know there's also a presentation from the applicant themselves, but we are recommending that council uphold our information requirements. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Barkwell.
So when the Hunter's Hill was approved, my understanding, well, it's more than just my understanding, my knowledge is that the pipe, the sewer pipe, it was designed to only accommodate the number of houses in the original plan, potential Bentley Road industrial area development, and the property development immediately to the south. So how, and there's nothing in there, you've done water modeling studies and such, but I didn't see anything about how the additional sewer is going to be handled.
Through the mayor, we do have a requirement. It's under the same point in the TPC outcome letter for water modeling and sewer modeling to be completed. The applicants at this time have only submitted the application for water modeling, and that has been completed. They haven't taken the step to do the sewer modeling yet, but it is a requirement of the rezoning application as well.
Just following. I think that's where they should have started, because that's your pinch point, you know. But anyway, I guess they'll get to it. It won't happen until it's answered. Yeah.
Council Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I certainly, I don't see the problem with increasing the density and doing what needs to be done to take the neighborhood towards that goal. I mean, the infrastructure was invested in to enable building in that area. It's on the hillside. We're not taking away from farmland. It's really challenging to build in Summerland and actually build new homes. So this part's already done. So I understand those other requirements will be met if it's going to be moved forward. So that's important, but I think the key is that the neighborhood plan that was, completed in 2016 was with data that was accurate at the time, and the number of houses and the number of people that are going to be living there potentially has dramatically changed. So I think that it's a reasonable requirement to request these things to ensure that the proper amenities are in the area for the potential number of people who could live up there. Even if the intention, according to the plan, is duplexes, that might not speak for both development parcels. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with going to 4 units on the properties if that's what's intended. But planning for that properly so that residents living in that area can walk around, that there are parkland amenities, those are good planning. Those are providing a complete neighborhood for the residents who will potentially live up there. And I think that that's important. Increasing the density is great. This is just making sure that we have amenities for the larger number of people who live in a new community really up there together.
Maybe we should hear from the applicant before we discuss it. Yeah. Would the applicant like to come up and present?
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Carmen Chanasik and I represent Emil Anderson Properties. Emil Anderson Properties is the managing partner of the Hunters Hill joint venture. Thank you for your time today. Really, the ask at this stage is of council to help us advance our application in a timely manner. That's really what we're asking for at this stage. So the Hunters Hill neighborhood plan was mentioned as started in 2016 with a number of units at that time. Since 2016, Amel Anderson Properties has worked very closely with district staff on increasing that density to what you see today in Hunters Hill phases 1 to 3. The district collaborated with us through that process, through park dedication, through trail networks, et cetera. And we're really quite proud of the 72 units that currently exist at Hunters Hill. And we want to continue that community, and we want to essentially allow for a differentiating product type to really speak to the affordability and attainability goals that I know the district is supportive of. So as you all know, in 2024, the province stepped in with an approach to streamline development permit approvals to really increase housing supply and increase an affordability metric in the development world. In June of 2024, Amel Anderson Properties met with district staff, and really from June till November, we worked with district staff on the process. And essentially what we asked district staff was, what can we do to provide a more affordable housing type at Hunters Hill? And it should be noted to an earlier question that the original application actually did not include an urban growth boundary inclusion. We were simply looking for how can we provide a duplex product at Hunters Hill. District staff advised us that they would like to see the application included in the urban growth boundary. And so we amended our application to reflect that. At that time, district had also advised that the RU3 zoning would allow us to provide this duplex product at Hunters Hill. Again, it should be noted that the integrity and the master plan of Hunters Hill that you see today, we really have no intention on changing that. The architectural controls, the architectural appeal, the trail networks, the park space provided, we are simply looking to provide an additional duplex product for the market. It will be an affordable duplex product under $900,000 at Hunters Hill currently. If you wanted to buy a home tomorrow, it would be between 1.2 and 2.5. And so really looking to speak to that new housing product. Lots of discussion around, 500 units, 600 units. Councillor Peak made a great comment at the beginning. Topographically, we cannot do 4 units per lot at Hunters Hill. We have no disturbed covenants. We have no build zones. The setbacks wouldn't allow for that type of building. And so this RU3 zone really allows us to achieve that duplex. But I would say that Amel Anderson Properties and the partnership would be open to a zone that would allow for duplexes outside the urban growth, inside the urban growth, but just allow that the flexibility to build that into our master plan community. Through some of the comments that we heard earlier, it should be noted that through this rezoning process, our team has worked diligently to update a traffic impact assessment. We've done the water modeling. The sanitary modeling is days away. But through that, we've proved out that we have the servicing capacity, and we will do upgrades as required to support the additional density. We will be providing additional park space through this application, additional trail connections. And so all of the supporting documents for the rezoning, biological studies, wildfire studies have all been updated. And so I want to stress that we aren't asking council or staff to simply not do their due diligence in reviewing these reports. But the information has been provided and will continue to be provided through the rezoning application. We are simply at this time asking that the council reconsider writing out a 275-page document that is basically a summary of all of the reports provided. Our planning consultant has advised us that that is a 6-month process to update that document. And so again, I want to, make sure everybody's aware that we're just trying to streamline this timeline. There is no information that won't be presented to the district that they haven't asked for through this process. And I really want to stress that. So, at the end of it, we want to work collaboratively with staff. We've heard tonight the importance of a tax base. We are here as development partners in Summerland to help you increase that tax base through affordable housing, through attainable housing, and really speak to a product that hasn't been delivered in Summerland to date. And that's really what we're asking for. My colleague Evan is going to speak to the last 2 points, and then we can open it up for questions. Thank you, Your Worship.
You.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Just to touch on the last 2 points, which were the off-street pathway down Sanborn and the water service upgrade on Garnet Valley Road. Just a very brief summary of what the conversation evolved into was our RU3 rezoning, looking at 210 lots versus the original master plan of 173 lots. The number of 600 plus units has come up a couple times tonight, which was the basis of the upgrade of the off-street pathway. So the off-street pathway down Sanborn is about 250 meters. It'd be, I would say, difficult to build. There would be some blasting involved. I don't believe the stretch down Sanborn to Bentley would be constructible at all. I think there's some retaining walls that prohibit a pathway. So I think rethinking this pathway and the need based on 210 lots versus 173 lots is worth the discussion on this group. Jumping over to, excuse me, the Garnet Valley Road. We did have conversations with staff about low water pressure at 19008 Garnet Valley Road. The solution that we found while water modeling was to move the water service above the booster pump station. This booster pump station was constructed about 10 years ago, where it is our belief that this could have been a foreseen circumstance where district would have or should have moved this water service above the booster pump station at the construction of the booster pump station. The timing of this, I believe, is a little unfair to the developer as an offsite upgrade. The offsite upgrades typically are frontage improvements immediately adjacent to your site. This is about 3 kilometers away from our site. So we're looking to have a discussion to have this removed from council reconsideration. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Just ask if both of you can just stay here for, I'm sure council has some questions. Council, any questions? Councillor Barco.
Aside from the fixing the lack of water issue, I don't see any, the distances don't matter. To me, it's the result in effect. But do I understand the main conflict problem here is that you don't want to have to take the 6 months that a consultant tells you it would take to summarize the information that's already available and completed?
That's correct. The information that we're providing is going to be, or that would be summarized in the neighborhood plan, will be provided through separate reports through our consultants. So the accumulation of all of that information and back and forth to have a neighborhood plan written to district staff's liking, we believe is a lengthy process.
More comment.
Anyone else? Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. So first of all, Emil Anderson, Dilworth Homes has done a phenomenal job up at Hunter's Hill. And so I commend you on the work that you've done up there. I understand when I read the reports that were submitted and I take a look at what CTQ submitted in the reports, and CTQ also did the original neighborhood plan back in 2016, and you take a look at their neighborhood plan and you take a look at the documents that were submitted by CTQ to move forward with this application, the information is there. It is there. And so I understand where Emil Anderson is coming from. And I understand that at this point, I don't want to see 37 units or 37 lots with duplex units stalled on a basis of a paperwork red tape issue. And so I think that around this table, we have to figure out how we can move forward to make this happen.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions from the applicant before we let them go?
I think some could potentially come up. So,
Yeah, well, then we can
yeah.
call them back. But
Okay.
okay, just don't. Councillor Peak.
My question is to our own staff. A consolidation of a neighborhood plan, while being convenient and useful, could in fact the separate reports be compilated to do a similar opportunity?
Through your worship to Council Peak, that's kind of what we were hoping to do with the update to the neighborhood plan, was to take their reports that they're already generating and amend the schedules that are currently in that plan and to reflect an updated document. All of the studies that they are mentioning they will complete will just feed into that plan. And that's the reason why we were thinking it's not going to take very long, because it's just a technical exercise to do that.
So in fact, the extra month to do this was to be able to do that work in-house.
Through your worship to Councillor Peak, we'd be working in tandem with the applicant and their agent. They have a planning agent now, to ensure that they're meeting their goals as the applicant. And we're getting an updated document that makes sense in relation to our official community plan.
Follow up, Councillor Peak. Okay. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. So Brad, you're indicating a month, yet your applicant is saying by a third-party consultant that they're at 6 months. So I'm kind of at a quandary here where they're talking with their consultant and he's telling them a timeline and you're telling us, oh, no, it's 6 times faster. So I'm wondering why? How are you now the expert in their planning?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, I'm not the expert in their planning. Never didn't state that. I'm saying that with regards to the information that we are asking them to do, the no public engagement for the plan itself, that the engagement would occur with the rezoning application, that the documents that need to be updated in the plan are the ones they've already have. They've got a development concept already developed by CTQ, as you mentioned. They've got a TA they're working on right now. They've done the servicing analysis. We know the road standard from our SDS bylaw. All that information is fairly easy to update within a plan. So it's my professional opinion as a planner as well that it's not going to take that long. And I know they've got a different professional opinion, but that's coming from a consultant.
Usually it's the other way around. It's us that's taking a long time and the developer is saying you can do it in a month. And so now it's kind of, I find it quite humorous actually, that the tables have suddenly turned. Councillor Peak.
If I might ask the applicants, Mr. Mayor, so Does a month make a difference in the timeframes for you to move forward? You still have the sanitary sewer to work on, the report on that. Does that month make a big difference to you folks?
Through your worship, given that we have been discussing this with staff since spring, early summer of last year, the impact of taking an additional month, I would argue 6 months, for this document, and then through council, through public hearing, it would be probably fall before we would be in front of council with rezoning. So if that was the case and council wanted to uphold this recommendation, it is likely that we would pull our rezoning application at this time and move forward with our current zoning in place.
Councillor Trainer?
This might be a silly question, but can we not move forward with what these guys need to do at the same time as updating the plan? Like, could we do them together? Because we've had a really good working relationship so far, and the project looks really good, and I think we all want it to succeed. But at the same time, we need to look out for the district's interest and what happens 5, 10 years, 15 years from now. So I want to try to find some kind of balance that meets everybody's needs. So is there a way to kind of move the project along while getting what we require and they get to move along too? Is there a way to do that?
Mr. Dalton?
Well, I think that's the intent of this meeting. I think council can weigh in on this and say it's not required. In terms of the neighborhood plan, in order to allow them to proceed as they want to. That's the intent of the process. For reconsideration, I mean, that reconsideration process. Like I said, the timeline to update the plan itself, I've estimated a month, but it would be happening at the same time as they're doing other plans that we haven't received the traffic impact assessment as an example. I know they're working on that right now as we speak. The sanitary sewer modeling, which was brought up, all of that would be part of the normal type of process application information that we required in order to move forward with bringing that rezoning back up to council. So it's all going to happen around the same time anyways. If council agrees with the applicant, it would just remove one thing off their list.
Councillor Barkle?
Thank you, Worship. A couple of two very different things here. I'm wondering about some of these other issues other than this neighborhood plan, like the off-street pathway. I mean, maybe it's steep, so maybe use stairs. But I think access is an issue there. It's a big recreational area. It is difficult to get to. You mentioned that previously planned access wasn't provided. Is there any reason or excuse they've provided for not doing what they said they were going to do on this first phase, or the access?
Through your worship to Councillor Barkwell, maybe I'll start this and then Bobby, if you want to add on to it. So just to be clear, this wasn't a request from us in phase 1 of their development. So the applicant is correct in that it's a new request. And the reason why we think it's important now is because of the increase in density of the upper areas of and also because there'll be sidewalk connectivity in those upper areas. So we want to continue that connection down Sanborn and down the hill to allow for future connection in the future. Now, that's just our staff's opinion. Again, council can override that, but in terms of the technical ability to build it, maybe I'll pass it off to Bobby.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. The requirement that staff recommended in the TPC outcome letter that's currently under review tonight by council is simply a requirement for an off-street path to be constructed from one area to another area through an area, right? we're not necessarily dictating where the off-street path goes, or if maybe the applicant is assuming that it's going down the side of the road and there's going to be blasting. We're open to working with the applicant on how it gets done, through whatever means may be necessary, but that's the requirement or the recommendation that we came up with in the letter, is to create a connection towards the downtown for these more affordable units that may be more attainable to families and younger kids to get to school. So, like I haven't seen a grading plan through that area, for example, and I'm not sure that they've looked at it either necessarily from a technical standpoint, but staff are definitely open to working with them on how it can be done.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I misunderstood because I thought there was access that, in the current development hadn't been provided or something, but this is also understood to be new access because of the density and sidewalks, which all makes good sense. So there's 72 houses built so far, which leaves 100 empty lots right now. And so it's been going for like 4 years or so, you do 20 a year. So why would you throw away the opportunity for the extra income of additional units, higher density, which means in the development world, more profits, for the fact that, from the time this idea became a twinkle in the eye to when you get rezoning took a year. Any rezoning application in Vancouver takes a year. You're saying you're going to walk away from it. I'm not buying that. That part just doesn't make sense to me.
Through your worship, the goal really to bring on the duplexes was to provide more affordable solutions at Hunters Hill. We can absolutely continue to build single family homes at Hunters Hill and continue on with that program. When the province announced their legislation in 2024, Emil Anderson looked at all of our properties in alignment with the Urban Development Institute and CHBA. All the developers got together in the Okanagan and really assessed where there was possibilities for us to streamline housing, bring on more housing stock at a more affordable rate. And obviously that it helps your tax base as well. With that said, Hunters Hill, you're absolutely right, Councillor Barkwell. Hunters Hill was always contemplated as a single family community, and we could continue to build it as a single family community. We really looked at this as an opportunity to provide this additional housing product type for the market. We heard through our meetings with the district that finding planning staff was challenging and they couldn't find affordable housing and the housing stock wasn't here. And so these types of developments help that and help that housing supply stock. So we looked at it as an opportunity that Hunters Hill could participate in helping the district move housing product along. At the same time, we really believe that this is the right thing for Hunters Hill to do, is to provide this additional housing stock at a very low density, at a very low impact to the surrounding residents and to the adjacent communities. We don't necessarily want to just throw it out, but we do have the opportunity that if the rezoning did move forward in a timely manner, we could advance phase 4 under the current zoning and continue to build the single family homes that we are doing right now. So I don't want you to take my comment that it was lighthearted and we will just throw it out. But it is a frustrating process for us when we're really trying to do the right thing for the community and for the district. And we want to do it in a streamlined manner and as effectively as possible.
I guess what I find a little bit frustrating is back in 2016 when the original plan was to was for there to be septic there and there to be no sewer. And then the plan came forward. It came to council. We really worked on that and we got that force main because the concern was preserving the agriculture and everything. There was a big discussion and we got it connected to sewer. And I remember at the time, I think both Councillor Barkwell and I were asking, okay, now it's sewer. Why don't you have more density. You can have more density now there because it's sewer, right? And I know you weren't involved in those at that time, but there wasn't any interest. It was, no, we're good with the way it is. We're good with this, that plan. And I understand times have changed, but I think with a little bit of foresight back in 2016, we wouldn't be here today, right? We would have had that. And that's what's really frustrating for us is when a plan comes, a lot of efforts put into it, a lot of council times put into it, staff time, developers time and everything. And council makes suggestions like greater density, but it's not taken up at the time. And but then the plan's put in place, and then we find, 8 years later, they come back to us and say, oh yeah, we'd like to change, make a change. So that's the frustration I have. I hear where you're coming from. I appreciate it. But it's like, well, it's what we were saying to you right at the beginning. So anyway, is there any way we can allow a duplex without it being part of the inside the urban growth boundary?
To answer your question, it would not be my planning recommendation. And it definitely was not my planning recommendation. The applicant is correct in processing this rezoning application because a duplex is urban development. Like you can call it a different word if you want, but it's urban residential style development. And if you're proposing that now, because you have sanitary sewer servicing, you should be planning for it. And you do that by first putting in an urban growth boundary. That's our staff opinion, but council can disagree.
Councilor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. So could we not move forward with the duplexes? And as we're going through our OCP now, that, and we've done it before, where we then include in the future OCP plan that we bring that portion of Hunters Hill or Hunters Hill into our urban growth boundary. Would that not work?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton. Yeah, the timing of this is a little bit unfortunate because we are going through the OCP review right now. I think at the staff level, I know Carmen and I have also talked about the timing of this being a difficult one because we are going to be updating our OCP plan in the near future within the next year. I think all we can do at the staff level right now in processing this new rezoning application coming forward is to review the current OCP in its current form today, because that's the one that's been adopted by our council 10 years ago. So in evaluating that OCP, it states that we should be basing a future expansion of the urban growth boundary on the findings of neighborhood plan. That was the rationale for us requiring the update the neighborhood plan. Now, in the fullness of time, I can guarantee we are going to be talking about Hunters Hill as part of our discussions with the OCP. It's got sanitary sewer. It didn't have that in 2015. We are going to be talking about that area to the north. And I hope we have a really great discussion, especially coming out of this meeting with the public on that topic. But unfortunately, their application is coming forward. We can't stop that application coming forward. And so all we're doing is providing our best advice to council as to how to process that with our current OCP in place.
So it's doable, is what I'm understanding. It's not the norm. It's not the norm and how we would usually proceed, but it is doable. And that the long-range plan for our OCP, it was already embedded that Hunters Hill would become within that boundary already, I'm assuming.
Within your word, sorry, through your worship, Council Patton, I can't make that assumption. That was definitely an area we would be looking at. There's a few other areas where we have to do a technical assessment of other areas. Maybe it's a retraction of the urban growth boundary in other areas. So there's going to be a lot of community discussion on that topic.
All right, thank you. So at this point, we could do the duplexes without going into an urban growth boundary because we don't even know if our future OCP will even include Hunter's Hill then in our urban growth boundary. So we could be actually hindering the developer today based on something that might happen a year from now.
Yeah, I think that's a rhetorical question. We have Councillor Betts, Sparkville and Peak.
Sorry, my point is actually like a different part of the discussion here today, so you guys can get back to it. But I wanted to speak about the path on coming down Sanborn. So I actually, my friends live at that property where the road used to end and now it continues up. And so I was there when they were building those immense retaining walls on the one side and their property slopes down onto the other side. It would be very challenging to be putting an off-road path along there. I'm not the professional. I can't say what it is, but I know that would be very hard. So, but it's more a discussion about what we were talking about earlier today, about bike lanes, about sidewalks, about how our community connects, and where do we expect walking paths, walkability, bike paths, connectivity. This is a long way from the center. So are those residents going to expect, divided bike lanes all the way into town? That might not be something that we're willing to put forward. But I can see that up in the neighborhood that sidewalks and community connectivity would be valuable. But from there into town, no. And that's my opinion, but because it's a rural community connection way far out, I mean, it's just very challenging to put infrastructure like that far. And even at the meeting last night, we heard about some residents talking about, well, I live in a farming community, so that doesn't mean that you have every amenity, particularly if you live farther away from the center, from your core amenities. So I do think there's discussion there on what is required and where. So I'm sorry to get in the middle of this other part of the discussion, but that's my 2 cents.
No, it's all good. All on the table. Councillor Barkville.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Patton kind of reminds me what my very first thought was on this was, well, how the heck can we make a major OCP change like this when we started our OCP review on Friday? That really made me uncomfortable. But, it is an isolated area and it sort of ticks all the other boxes. And don't misunderstand me. I'm all for affordable housing and increasing density. Just that I'm not really buying it's going to take us 6 months and we don't want to wait story. So I'm also concerned, and I don't like to get too granular on these things, but I'm going to have to count on staff to really make sure we have this sort of connectivity within the layout that people will want. That kids are going to want to be taking shortcuts straight down the hill between lots and stuff to get down and up. There's little paths like that everywhere that start off kind of unofficially. And I think that the planners have to figure what you're going to have kids up there. It's all retirees now, I presume, mostly or largely, who are not riding mountain bikes up and down the hills, but it's going to change. And the shortest route will become the route. So keep that in mind. And other than that, I won't put it forward yet, but I'm all with going with the planner and his recommendations. We have professional opinions here. I think we should listen to them. And everybody has their own agenda and their own priorities. And our priority is making sure that what is developed in Summerland is good for all time in the future. And as careful as we are, still mistakes can be made. And so I don't want to take any chances, and I want to go with our planner's best advice.
Councillor Peak, then Trainer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because and I'll just ask the question. The timeframes, so this is recommendation to do both a rezoning and an OCP application. And what would make the difference between, so 4 months, is the 4 months, February, March, April, May, which still leaves a fair bit of construction time. What does that 4 months look like?
Through your worship to Councillor Peak, yeah, the time length keeps getting pushed back, unfortunately, because of concerns from the applicant on the process. So it's unfortunate, like this letter was sent on January 8th. But now it's being discussed at council on February 11th. So that's a month that's been lost. So I would say the 4 month would start, the following council's decision here. And that would be kind of like what our normal processing timeline would take for it to be adopted. May, yeah, end of May.
Good. Councillor Trainer.
Can you clarify, is the pathway supposed to go in phase 5 still? Or are you guys wanting to take it out completely? The sidewalk?
Yeah, through the worship. So phases 1 to 3, which are currently built, do not include a sidewalk. It was under a different road standard. But to be very clear, Amel Anderson Properties wants this master plan community to be connective. And so I'm glad to hear that, Bobby is open to working on different alternative modes of access. So our concern was predominantly around exactly what Councillor Betts mentioned is the topography, the blasting, the retaining walls, is that actually what's best for the community? Or is it, a trail system or a connection that we can make? Okay. So as far as sidewalks versus, naturalized paths, we don't have concerns on either side going from phase 4 all the way through to phase 7. Whatever makes the most sense for the development and the pedestrians and the residents within that development.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I do think that connectivity is really important. And I grew up in Coquitlam in the 80s, and Coquitlam was a district at that time. So it was similar to Summerland, not as much farmland, but they did a huge development called Westwood Plateau. And people had the same, I was a child at the time, but they did have the same concerns about connectivity and sidewalks. And now that's completely developed, which I assume Hunter's Hill will be one day, say 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And there's pathways and sidewalks everywhere now, and they're totally used. And you never would have thought that back in the 80s. And so we really need to think ahead. And so I do think that having connectivity is super important in Summerland, even though we do have farmland in between. I think people will use that a lot. So that's just one point I wanted to make. The second question I had, Brad, would you just be able to just quickly review the water aspect of this one more time, just so I have a really good understanding of it, what the district's asking in terms of that water on Garnet Valley Road, the water station?
Actually, I think that question is probably better answered by Bobby, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, through the mayor. So just a general overview. It's the last property connected to the Garnet Valley domestic water system before Pump House 8, it's called. And they're the highest elevation connected on the low pressure side of that pump. So on the high pressure side, everyone else north of that receives higher pressure. And when Hunter's Hills reservoir needs to refill, it takes water from the same system, although as mentioned, it's 3 kilometers away, it's still connected. And that low pressure side, the pump house triggers the pumps to start working when it goes off. So the low pressure side experiences at this property specifically no pressure between certain hours when that's going off. So the solution was to connect it to the high pressure side of the pump house, which is about 50 meters in length from the service, to backfeed it south to connect it to the high pressure side so that they don't experience that pressure loss. Yeah, that's the general overview.
So just back to the connectivity, I agree with what's being said, that within the neighbor itself, connectivity is really important. Now down the hill, yeah, that'd be nice if it's doable, but what if it's not doable? And so how do we build that into I guess, a resolution that's saying, yeah, we would like to see it if you can work, if working together, you can find something that works, but I don't think it necessarily should be a game changer because, as Councillor Betts said, it's way out there and people will be driving their kids to school. But I don't know how you would word something like that and making sure that both of us, both sides are working on good faith to see if it happens if possible. Councillor Peak.
But it say where feasible? Otherwise, people are just gonna walk down the side of the road.
Yeah.
They do everywhere. From Prairie Valley, people walk in. Even the areas that don't have any, so you just walk in and there's lots of people that walk into town.
Good thing we have feet. Okay, council, we need some sort of a resolution here. Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to propose that we allow the 37 lots to proceed and that any updates to the neighborhood plan, Emil Anderson, Dilworth Homes can discuss with whatever issues there are with our planning department. I believe that the off-street pathway from the intersection of Dixon and Sanborn, I think at this time is not required, but interconnectivity of the subdivision itself is. And when you take a look at the water report from Bob Rasco, he is indicating that the water pressures and are good for the 37 lots. And so, and he also talks about the reservoir size of that at 1,800 liters, and is what his design is taken on. So I would say that we move forward with the 37 lots and to allow Emil Anderson to proceed.
Okay, just for clarity, and the update to the neighborhood plan would be in concurrence, or you're saying that's not necessary?
No, what I am saying is that the information that's coming forward to our planning department from Emil Anderson, the information is there for the neighborhood plan. And if I think that if Emil Anderson is willing to do a neighborhood plan, but not in 30 days, then I believe that's something that our planning department and Emil Anderson can work on.
Yeah. Is that clear to everybody on council? No.
So, okay, so CTQ has done the paperwork in regards to the subdivision. And CTQ also did the neighborhood plan in 2016. So what I'm saying is that we move forward with the 37 lots, and we don't have Emil Anderson actually do a 277-page document for the neighborhood plan, but that it can be, the information that we have can be incorporated into the existing 2016 plan.
Okay, sorry, we just need to, I've got a lot of questions on this myself.
Why don't a motion has been made. And we would need so it's basically to allow 37 lots to proceed. Basically, that's your motion.
Please.
And so I would need a seconder on it, and then we can ask questions. Do we have a seconder? Okay, we don't have a seconder. So that doesn't come forward. Does somebody want to bring forward another motion? Councillor Barkwell.
I'll move the recommended resolution in the report in the agenda. Is that the one that's displayed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'll move the one from the agenda.
Okay, do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Trainer. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, so we can discuss that. Councillor Barkwell.
So as I mentioned before, I think that it's a reasonable offsite extension to or improvement to have the water issue resolved.
Okay, what I'm going to suggest is that we vote on each 1, 2, 3 separately. So that's okay, corporate officer, if we do that. Councillor Peak. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Councillor Peak.
Just perhaps a friendly amendment to construction off-street pathway from intersection of Dixon Sanborn to South Pump House where feasible.
I'll move that amendment if I can move my own.
Does that work?
Okay, so I have a bit of.
We need a vote on
So
the
we need a motion to divide the main motion into 3 parts.
No,
Yes, it's an incidental motion.
Okay.
So it's a division of the question, which separates the different parts of the question to stand on their own.
Okay, so a motion to vote on them separately, all 3 of them separately. Okay, Councillor Peak, second on that. Councillor Betts, all in favor? That carries. And so then I think we'll come to the amendment on the second when we get there. Yeah. So the first one, any discussion on the update to the Hunters Hill neighborhood plan? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I understand how Councillor Patton is trying to gain the momentum to get these ultimately 37 homes built. I understand that, but we're looking at a larger neighborhood. And I know that we're not looking at a large difference, but in the different, that's the intention, but intentions can change. So our due diligence is to the laws and the responsibilities of the district. So I'm trying to find a way forward with this, but I'm not certain what the legislative path is. It would just be so much easier if this was coming as we're already working on the OCP. Like we're doing the work. We're just not there yet. In some ways, our hands are tied.
Yeah, Councillor Trainer.
Just for clarification on updating the neighborhood plan, all the documents or the majority of them are done, which include all the latest information. Is it just a matter of taking that information and incorporating it into the 2015? So we're not rewriting an entire new plan. We're just taking the new findings and plopping them into is that why you've estimated a month? Because it's not a rewrite, not a complete rewrite. Is that correct?
Yeah, through your worship, to Councillor Trainer. Yeah, that's correct. Again, there's still some things to be completed, the traffic impact assessment. There could be some things coming out of that, but I know a lot of the sections would remain the same. For example, the environmental sensitivity areas, what they're proposing is the same as what was proposed before. So that section won't really change a lot at all, if at all.
Okay.
There could be others, right? In terms of, park areas, connectivity, like was mentioned by council, density. We want to ensure we are doing due diligence to plan for that. And the way we do that is through this neighborhood plan update.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Barkle?
Maybe I'm making an assumption here, but I feel like this is not just the Director of Development Services opinion, it's our staff, it's the department's opinion. It's a consensus of our staff working on it that this is the way we should proceed. And they're far more familiar and intimately involved in both this plan and developments in general than we are. And so once again, that's sort of why I support their recommendation.
Councillor Peak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my past, an update would be a consolidation with the new information. So that's what you're doing, is a consolidation of the new information integrated into the neighborhood plan. And I see that as being the solid base to move forward. So I think it's important and I think it's doable. And I think these folks are interested in making this possible. I think that the opportunity for this extra building and affordable or attainable or whatever the word you want to use is important to the community. I'd like to see this move forward, and I think this is the way to do it.
Yeah, okay, I agree. I would just love to be allow 37 lots to proceed. I would just love to be able to do that, but I just don't see how we can just do that without, I just, I understand the process. So I'm in support of this. Okay, I'll call the question for number 1, update the Hunters Hill neighborhood plan. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Patton opposed. That carries. Okay, the construction of the off-street pathway. Councillor Peak.
Could I put a friendly amendment to have the word feasible in there?
Okay,
Where feasible?
would that be a friendly amendment, corporate officer, or we have to vote on the amendment? I think we just vote on the amendment. Okay, so you want to bring up amendment forward? Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Betts. So now we discuss the amendment about where feasible. Any discussion on the amendment?
Sure.
Councillor Betts.
I think that the where feasible encourages the district and the developer to work together to see if there is a location that can work, that the ideal goal for the residents living in the neighborhood would be something like that. But that if it involves blasting and, reclaiming land, that it's going to be prohibitive in the process, that we can be open to that being an answer as well. That's my opinion on the amendment.
So I'll call the question on the amendment. So we're amending the motion. Everyone in favor of the amendment? None opposed, that carries. Now I'll call the question on number 2 as amended. All in favor? And none opposed, that carries. Number 3, the extension of the water main. Any discussion? See any? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Patton opposed? That carries. Okay, thank you very much. That was a difficult one. Moving on to OCP and zoning amendment for 15815 Highway 97 and our new planner. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight I'll be presenting an official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Application for the use of a food processing facility. The applicant is in attendance this evening. Subject properties outlined in blue is surrounded by Highway 97, Jones Flat Road, and other agricultural parcels. It currently contains an apple orchard, a single detached dwelling, and an accessory building. Both existing structures are proposed to be demolished. The subject parcel also lies within the agricultural land reserve. where land must first comply with the provincial land reuse regulations of the Agricultural Land Commission. The ALC has regulations regarding food processing facilities, such as at least 50% of the farm product is to be produced on the same farm on which the processing takes place, or on the farms of a cooperative association. The applicant is currently working with the ALC to meet their requirements. The current agricultural designation.
Sorry, Laura, maybe just put the mic a little closer to you there. They're not very good because they don't stretch all the way. Oh, I have to bend over myself. It's really annoying.
Is this better? Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. The current agricultural designation does not support the development of industries on agricultural land. The proposal is to redesignate the parcel to agri-industrial, which supports food processing and packing. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject property to M3 agri-industrial, as the current A1 agricultural small acreage does not permit the proposed use. The proposed M3 zone permits primary and secondary processing of agricultural products as a principal use. Here's a site plan of the proposal. You can see different features on the plan, such as proposed parking area in the north and a truck turnaround. The proposal is for an approximately 2,600 square meter facility and is intended to be used for the Okanagan Food and Innovation Hub as a tenant and Locomotive Organic Delivery for their own operation. The Food Hub, Community Futures, Okanagan-Similkameen, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the District of Summerland have been working together to initiate a regional food hub for several years now. More recently, Locomotive Organic Delivery joined the endeavor as a partner, helping to support the land purchase and building construction to host the food hub. Staff have referred this application to internal departments and external agencies requesting comments, which are within the report. Of the internal department comments received, there are no major concerns. Of the external agency responses received, the key response was from the ALC, requiring further information and an additional application. The developer held a public information meeting. Some of the comments received from the public, detailed in the report, were regarding traffic, noise, and ALC requirements. The application was presented to the Agriculture Advisory Committee. Some of the comments and questions were regarding archaeology, any future plans for the site, and the selection of a parcel within the ALR. The AAC recommended supporting this application for approval. The application was also presented at the Advisory Planning Commission meeting. There were comments and questions regarding the new location of the proposal, ALC requirements, and septic system capacity. The APC recommended supporting this application for approval. Staff support this application for the following reasons. As the proposed location is adjacent to the highway, it may be well suited for truck access. There are minimal residential neighbors surrounding this proposed development. The proposed OCP designation supports food processing and packing. The proposed zone permits primary and secondary processing for agricultural products as a principal use. And the continued work in progress of implementing a food hub within the district supports council's strategic priority to continue moving forward with this project. Staff are recommending that council support the application for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, any questions? Council Parkland.
It's a great application. Of course, we're all behind it. And I just wanted to note that I saw like a province-wide headline the other day, which may help their application, thanks to Donald Trump, if you can believe it, because the thrust of the article was that, and our biggest hurdle here is going to be the agricultural land reserve and their permission to do primary and secondary processing on this property, not Summerland. And they're saying with the new tariffs and everything, there's going to be even more pressure on the ALC to allow processing on farmland. So that's another point in your favor that from an unexpected source.
Thank you. Nothing surprises me anymore. Counselor Betts.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Second, Counselor Peak. So presumably that other, so the structures that are there now, that one structure, part of it will be parking lot where the structure is now, but the other structure that'll be removed and that will now be available for farming. That land.
Could you repeat that?
So there's two structures there now, right? And they'll be torn down. And one of them is kind of taken up by the parking area. And then the one further south, that will come down. And so that land where that structure is now will then become available for agricultural use.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. Moving on to OCP and zoning bylaw amendment for 15600 Highway 97. And Laura.
Thank you. We have another official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment application to permit the use of a daycare. The applicant is also in attendance this evening. The parcel 15600 Highway 97 is located at the corner of the highway and Thompson Road, which was the location of the visitor center. The subject property outlined in blue here is adjacent to Highway 97 to the east, Thompson Road to the south, and has residential properties surrounding it to the north and west, as well as across Thompson Road. The property is currently district owned, and the building on the property is managed by the Chamber of Commerce, who operated the Tourist Information Center. The current tourist commercial designation supports uses such as tourist accommodations and food and beverage sales. It does not support the development of a daycare. Therefore, the proposal is to redesignate the parcel to low-density residential in order to support the use of a childcare center, and which will better align with the surrounding parcels. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject property from highway commercial to neighborhood commercial, as the current zone does not permit the use of a childcare center. The proposed neighborhood commercial zone permits childcare center major and minor as a principal use. The subject property also lies within the agricultural land reserve. Staff have consulted with ALC, and the commission has submitted a letter stating that the parcel is exempt from the non-farm use of a daycare. As such, the ALC land use restrictions for a childcare center do not apply to this parcel. The district is currently in the process of selling the property, and the prospective new property owner is requesting to rezone and redesignate the property to support a change in use of the existing building. The applicant is proposing an approximately 48-space daycare or childcare center. Neighborhood commercial uses support low-density residential development, such as single-family housing, and would provide community services to the area. Staff have referred this application to internal departments and external agencies requesting comments. Comments were received from both internal and external agencies, which are provided in the staff report. The comments received so far do not indicate objections to the application. The development officer has waived the requirement of a public information meeting from the application procedures bylaw, as this is a district of Summerland parcel, and this application will still require public notification and a public hearing. The application was presented at the Advisory Planning Commission meeting. Some of the comments and questions, which are also detailed in the report, were regarding access along the highway and the need of daycares within Summerland. APC recommended supporting this application for approval. Staff support this application for the following reasons. The proposed use of a childcare center major and neighborhood commercial uses would provide a needed community amenity and service. The proposed use would align with the neighborhood commercial zone and supports local neighborhood commercial uses that are intended to serve communities. No negative impact to adjacent properties are expected, and the proposal is exempt from restrictions of the non-farm use of a daycare within the ALC Act. So staff are recommending that council support this application for approval.
Yeah, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about outdoor space, actually. So where is it intended for there to be? Because I've been looking at the pictures, I just wasn't really clear. I know the parcel and I know the parking lot. I'm just not sure where children can play.
Through the chair, yes, that is a good question, and the province has requirements. So through their application process through the province, that'll be a requirement that they'll have to meet. So that would be up to the applicant and the province.
Okay.
But yes, that would be a provincial requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Make the joke. Go play on the road. Okay, anyone else? If someone want to bring a motion forward, then Councillor Betts,
I'll bring forward the motion as
Okay.
presented.
Councillor Patton, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. That comes to public hearing, next meeting. And no business arising. Any notices of motion? No notices of motion. Council reports. Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This council report is coming from the Summerland Arena, where I've been spending lots of time on the weekend and where the roof is leaking. Yeah, the roof that we just completed finishing and replacement. It's leaking in multiple places. So I need you guys to know that because we need to look into the work, please. And there's more than one location. It was dripping near me and over there under the clock. And so thought it was time we knew. It's because it finally snowed and then melted, right? So we had an opportunity to find that.
See you.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I am aware through a brief update I've had with our Director of Community Services that there appears to be some leaking. I'm not sure if it's associated with particular rain or melt events yet, but one of the things they're looking at is there used to be like a soft paper spray coating on the bottom, I think, of the underside of the roofing material, and it may have had a effect that absorbed moisture. And I think perhaps the new roofing doesn't have that. And so what might be happening is some condensation in the building. With the buildup, it's actually dripping. That's all I know right now. So you can't take that to the bank, but I'll be able to update council in the future on our investigations on this and if there's indeed a need to pursue further work through warranty or other measures.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Barkle.
I have the best report that I've ever had in 10 years of doing reports at council. I am very pleased and honored to have been an examiner for the Air Cadets merit. And I am totally impressed with the Air Cadets program and the things that they teach the kids about teamwork and inclusivity and all the things that leadership. You know, it's not about they all want to be pilots or anything. They're really building leaders for the community for the future. totally impressed and very pleased to have done that.
Thank you.
Squadron 395, Edmonton.
This is the result. Okay. If there's no other reports, motion to adjourn, please. Counselor Betts, Counselor Barkwell, all in favor? That carries. 9:24. 8:24.